Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. This is Danny Campbell Dickerson, and today we are looking at my presentation about the Taliban and their changing of culture. So, to start off, we are going to talk about who are the Taliban, where do they live, and why did I choose them. So, the Taliban is currently a terrorist group that is happening today that is all over Afghanistan, that is taking over small places of Afghanistan and changing the culture there into their own. There's no set place for where they live in Afghanistan. They live everywhere. So essentially, where do they live is in Afghanistan. There's no like specific town or anything like that. And why did I choose them? I chose them because I thought it was very interesting about the changes that they're doing to the different cultures around them, and what does that mean for them when they are changing these cultures. The two pictures that I have showing here, the one on this top left, are two people who are in the Taliban when this picture was taken. And the bottom picture I thought would help give more insight as to what's currently going on. So, in the yellow are the contested places. This is where the Afghanistan government and the Taliban are fighting for who's going to control that part. The places in blue are where the government has complete control. There is no Taliban influence. And lastly, the colors and places in red are under Taliban control, and there is no government influence there. So with the Taliban changing culture, they have come up with some of their own rules. And I thought these rules were very interesting because in a lot of cultures, you don't really see the idea of rules. So I thought that was literally an interesting new movement that the Taliban had done. So let's read some of them. So our first quote is music is forbidden in Islam, Muhammad said, adding that we are hoping that we can persuade people not to do such things instead of pressuring them. The second quote says, during their first stint in power, the Taliban were infamous for their strict interpretation of Sharia law, banning music, photography, television, and even children's games such as kite flying. The third quote says the Taliban have also banned growing protests against their rule unless permission has been granted by their justice ministry. Before I continue, I just want to say if I have butchered anything, I 100% apologize. I am trying my hardest, but I did have a lot of difficulty. This is like the fourth or fifth run through. Anyways, though, so this kind of was a new idea that came to me for culture because in a lot of cultures, you see the culture continuing to be learned by music, by photography, by statues, by games that have been going on for centuries and centuries. So for the Taliban to ban those and restrict those was very interesting to me as a culture idea look, because you don't really see that in cultures. Another thing that I thought interesting was the protests and how they banned the protests. I thought that was very interesting because in a lot of cultures you see people wanting their culture to be known and to be heard and to have their people be heard. So it was very interesting to see a whole different outlook. Um, I also thought it was very interesting that music was forbidden in Islam. Once again, because music is a big piece of learning a culture, there are songs that go through with listening to those. So I thought that was very interesting that the Taliban decided to change that aspect. The other thing is the changes in schools. This is more towards females, but I still thought that it was really interesting and should definitely be touched upon. I do realize now, as I am looking at this, that there are quotes that look like they might have been the same thing, and for that I apologize. But we are going to continue on. So our first quote is a handful of women-led protests against Taliban rules have faced violent crackdowns in Kabul and other cities. Their second one has Taliban have already taken steps to restrict them, including announcing earlier this month, that certain subjects may be off limits and female students. And then Taliban have already taken steps to restrict them, including announcing earlier this month that certain subjects may be off limits and female students, would be barred from studying with males. Um, I thought these were very interesting because a lot of the times that you hear about females or you talk about females in cultures, they are usually held at a higher regard. They are the goddesses, they are the birth givers, they are held at a higher sense because of what they do for the people in their culture. So to see females be changed in a different way and being more abandoned, being more pushed into the stay at home, do as you're told, and not really learn their education is definitely a change that you see in cultures that you don't usually see. It's usually very much the opposite where women are held in a higher form. So I thought that was very interesting for the Taliban to change that with their culture. And our third and last one, I wanted to show just some of the severity of what the Taliban will do and what this means for the people who have not yet been taken over from the Taliban. So let's read through. Promotion of virtue and prevention of vice and first prohibitions on behavior the Taliban deemed un-Islamic, requiring women to wear the head-to-toe barak or shadri, banning music and television, and jailing men whose beards it deemed too short. The second quote says, under the Taliban's rule between 1996 and 2001, brutal floggings, amputations, and public executions were common. Women were largely confined to their homes, and the death penalty was in place for offenses including female adultery, homosexuality, and the rejection of Islam. The third quote says, Afghanistan is facing collapse as the poverty rates climb, hunger soars, and the economy tanks. Hundreds and thousands of people could flee their homes, joining the millions of Afghans who are already displaced. So these three quotes I chose because it shows the severity that the Taliban will go to keep their culture and keep it from being deemed un-Islamic. For instance, the brutal floggings, the amputations, and the public executions, that's the Taliban showing that they don't care. This is their culture, this is how they see their culture, and you will follow their culture. It also goes back to showing that women are not held in high regards because they are confined to their homes. They are not really allowed to do what you would think they would need to do for this culture. And also the beards being deemed as too short, that is a very Western idea for beards. So to see the Taliban move away from Western civilization ideas such as women being able to wear regular clothing, music and television, jailing men whose beards are too short. A lot of that is very Western, and you can see the Taliban trying to move away from the Western civilization ideas. And what this means for the people in Afghanistan is that they're terrified. Their culture is being changed, and so they kind of have to deal with that, and that means that while they don't approve, they've decided to flee, they've decided to run away, they've decided that if their culture is not going to be what they want, they're going to leave. And that's also because of the Taliban's severity of, if you will not listen, you will die, this is our culture. um so, what do these changes mean for the Islamic culture, and how does this pertain to what we've talked about in class? So, this goes back to talking about Thiago, Tejukol, and Apaduri. Again, if I am messing those up, I apologize. So, Thiago talked a lot about Western civilization coming in and to other cultures and kind of changing those cultures and morphing those cultures into the Western civilization culture. And that's what you see the Taliban doing, is that they've gone into these small little places, these small little like state places, whatever you would like to call them, in Afghanistan, have come through, have changed the culture, have created these rules or ideas that they want their people to follow, have changed the religion, and have morphed it into their own ideas. And that's a huge piece that the Western civilization did a lot, was they would go in, they would teach people their ideas and the culture would change. And so that's what Thiago talked about. And that's kind of a piece of how the Taliban pertains. Another one is Teju Cole. He talked about the white savior complex. And if you read deeper into the Taliban, you do notice that a lot of that is what's going on. Um, the Taliban are coming into these places and in their eyes are seeing these people who do not know the true way to their culture, do not know the true way to their religion, have come in and have shown these people the way in their eyes, not realizing the damage that they're doing is greater than what's going on. And that kind of shows that white savior complex. Another way that the white savior complex is coming into place is again towards North America, who are currently trying to figure out how to help the people of Afghanistan and help the refugees and don't really know how to, and have kind of taken that whole poor pity Afghanistan role, let us help, which we're kind of fighting for and hasn't really been going on. It's a new idea that's currently happening in most recent news. And the third one is Apaduri, is the fact that this is turning into a global. Apaduri talked a lot about globalization, talked a lot about how cultures can expand, and that's kind of what's happening now. The Taliban is expanding their culture, is throwing their culture all over Afghanistan, and with that, Afghanistan people are leaving because of the Taliban, creating these global issues for different governments, different countries to deal with because they have these flood of refugees from Afghanistan coming into their countries for safety. So that's kind of how this takes on that global piece, and that's how this subject that I chose pertains greatly to what we're talking about in class with globalization and cultures and the change in cultures. And what do these all these changes mean for the Islamic culture? We don't really know. In all honesty, I don't really know. I don't really have an answer for that. My opinion, my thought process would be that it is going to be changed slowly, could be forgotten, but like we've seen in so many cultures and so many other things, is there's still reminiscence of original culture. There's still old people who remember the old languages. There's still people who carry the old artworks. There's still people who know the old songs. And you'll continue to see that through different cultures. And so that's where I think that take is going to happen for the Islamic cultures as well. A lot of it, the huge majority, is forgotten and changed. There will always be somebody, there will always be a family, there will always be a place where that culture can be remembered in their originality and how it once was. So yeah, that's my presentation and that's the end. I hope that everyone enjoyed this and that I made it so it could be understood. And everybody has a wonderful break and good night and good day from whatever time you're watching this. Okay, thank you. Bye.